Good evening and welcome to MNB World. You're watching News Mongolia and I'm your host Ulaanbaatar. And for top stories, joint statement on the Mongolia-United States strategic partnership. Mongolian-German-Israeli jazz big band performs in Ulaanbaatar city. Changes made to the vocational student stipend system. And for the news, stay tuned. The 15th annual bilateral consultations between Mongolia and the United States and their first strategic dialogue were held on August 24th. As an outcome of the dialogue, the two countries issued a joint statement reiterating that international disputes should be resolved by peaceful means and respect for the United Nations Charter and international law, including the principles of sovereignty and respect for the independence and territorial integrity of states and without the threat or use of force.
To this end, both nations expressed concern over the suffering of the Ukrainian people. The two nations also confirmed that countries around the world should work together to hasten the global post-pandemic economic recovery, including overcoming supply chain disruptions, and affirmed that the international community should unite in efforts to achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The two nations discussed potential collaboration on projects to advance Mongolia's economic development and diversification, digitalization, and economic independence, with a focus on renewable energy, food, digital trade, and security. The two nations highlighted their shared commitment to democratic principles and individual freedoms, as well as to strengthening the rule of law, establishing good governance, fighting corruption, safeguarding human rights, and upholding freedom of religion and belief. The two nations further expressed their mutual intent to strengthen collaboration in these areas. Mongolia and the United States decided to maintain the exchange of high-level bilateral visits, with the next round of annual bilateral consultations to be held in Washington in 2023.
The 30th anniversary of Israeli and Mongolian diplomatic ties was celebrated with jazz music in Ulaanbaatar city. With support from the Israeli embassy in Beijing, a Mongolian-German-Israeli big band presented its one-of-a-kind jazz infused with musical elements from all three countries.
With the help of the German Academic Exchange Service, 3 schools in Munich, Jerusalem, and Ulaanbaatar contributed to the music exchange project. The band consists of around 30 students from the Jerusalem Academy of Music and Dance, the University of Music and Performing Arts Munich, and the Mongolian State Conservatory. Half of the rhythm and brass sections are Mongolian musicians. To commemorate the 30th anniversary of diplomatic ties, Israel and Mongolia are strengthening their relationship through musical connections. The music project started with a public performance in front of Ulaanbaatar's Beatles Memorial on August 31st.
Cultural exchange is part of the work to bring people-to-people relations. Once you get the option to bring a Mongolian band or a Mongolian folklore to Israel, or vice versa, to bring an Israeli music, Israeli theater, Israeli culture to Mongolia, this is a bridge between our two countries. And of course, if there is a collaboration, like in this case, once you bring musicians from Israel and musicians from Mongolia and do this great collaboration, then a bridge is opened up, and then Mongolian musicians can come over to Israel and, of course, do beautiful activities. This is one aspect of that. The embassy's goal here is to bring more and more activities, not only in culture, of course, in different fields, in the medical field, agricultural, education, and so on and so forth. But in the cultural aspect, I would say that we're trying to expose the Mongolian people to more and more aspects of our beautiful culture.
Well, actually, there is great jazz in Mongolia thanks to Professor Martin Tsanker, that has brought actually the ambassador, the big ambassador, or, the godfather of jazz in Mongolia. So this is an extension of what Martin has been done for quite a while, but this is also joint forces of Israel. The Israeli jazz is very big nationwide, and so is Mongolian and German. So this is just an opportunity to play different types of jazz very classical stuff, classics, Count Basie, and so on, and some modern stuff written by the teachers mostly, and one student as well.
This is the first jazz project in Mongolia to bring together musicians from these three countries. Before their outdoor public concert in the nation's capital, the band traveled to Siling province for a one-week vacuum rehearsal.
Yeah, especially about this time, it's like previously we had internationally, from my experience at least, we had most of the people from two countries. Now we have people from three countries, Germany, Israel and Mongolia. And also, I think personally, I had the first experience to go out of the city and people say vacuum studies, we practiced rehearsed vacuumly there in Siling, at the Euro Lodge. We only played music and ate and sleep. So that was one of the special experience about this big band.
Here is very interesting because some of this didn't ever play big band before, but they do a great job really. And some of those are playing big band since long time. And so it's and everybody is with open ears here and open mind. That's very interesting because every day it's a different kind of thing.
The music exchange project continues in Ulaanbaatar with 3 concerts at Fat Cat Jazz Club from September 1st through 3rd and the free public concert at the Mongolian State Conservatory on September 4th. The National Big Band is presenting classic jazz and jazz interpretations of Mongolian and Israeli folk songs.
Many initiatives have been taken to support technical and vocational training center students and to improve their learning environment. This week, the Minister of Education and Science announced that students will be able to save their stipends and receive the full amount distributed upon graduation.
Mongolian citizens with a certificate of secondary education completion in 9th grade can enroll in 2.5 years of technical and vocational training. Adults can also enroll at technical and vocational training centers regardless of their education status. In 2020, the monthly stipend provided to 20 students was raised to 200,000 MNT.
Students studying at vocational training centers receive a 200,000 MNT monthly stipend from the state. In the future, it will be possible for the stipends to be deposited during enrollment and withdrawn upon graduation. This is not welfare money. Our country is transitioning from social welfare to a labor system. These technical and vocational training center graduates are the main force for implementing the new revival policy. Therefore, there is a need for a system of training and supplying technical professionals. In the future, we will move to a system where the operations of universities, vocational education, and high schools are integrated by allowing students to transfer their credit hours.
About 20,000 students a year enroll at vocational training centers and 18,000 to 19,000 students graduate. This year, around 38,000 students are studying at more than 80 vocational training centers nationwide. 75% of these students are under the age of 24, 95% are under 45, and 5% are over the age of 45. Mongolia's 2021 labor market outlook highlights that skilled trade graduates will be in high demand due to the country's booming construction industry.
Thank you for staying with us. Now let's take a look at the currency exchange rates provided by Mongol Bank. Here's the international news from our partner agencies. One day after meeting with U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen on a plan to impose a price cap on importing Russian oil, Britain's Chancellor of the Exchequer said he is hopeful that G7 finance ministers will agree to move ahead with the plan when they discuss it on Friday.
The chemical engineer by background.
British households are facing an 80% jump in energy bills triggered by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, with prices set to soar even higher in the coming months and fears the UK economy is heading into a potentially lengthy recession. Britain has been rudderless for weeks as it endures a deepening cost of living crisis, the worst to hit the country for decades. Since Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced his impending resignation on July 7th, a cascade of workers' strikes has disrupted ports, trains, and multiple industrial sectors as energy and food costs skyrocket and unions demand better pay.
I'm very conscious that people are anxious, they are worried, they've seen their energy bills, as we've been talking about, go from about £2,000 to £3,500, where the price cap will be in October, and then likely to rise even further because gas prices remain high in Europe, and our gas price is linked to European gas prices. And my message to your viewers is more help will be on its way. And
Zahavi tried to strike an optimistic note, saying the British economy is resilient with low unemployment, rising equity in its housing market after the pandemic, and well-capitalized banks. In the long term, Zahavi sees the UK investing in its gas assets in the North Sea, boosting offshore wind, tidal energy, and fracking.
that actually you should be thinking about investing in our gas assets in the North Sea or in fracking. But I think you need to carry the community with you. And what I would be strongly recommending if I was around the cabinet table would be that we are generous to the local community. The French do this very well on nuclear. So wherever they have a nuclear power plant within a certain radius, those households, those addresses get either subsidized or free energy. And I think that's how you get that support.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen warned Wednesday that a failure to place a price cap on Russian oil would hurt the global economy. She says without a price cap, we face the threat of a global energy price spike if the majority of the Russian energy production gets shut in. To be effective, participating countries would have to collectively agree to purchase the oil at a lower than market price.
It breaks my heart that I saw there's a
Large-scale solar installations on arable land are becoming increasingly popular in Europe and North America as farmers seek to make the most of their land and establish a second source of revenue. In our next report, let's take a look at the story of German orchard farmer.
It's picking season at Christian Natway's organic orchard in western Germany, and laborers are loading their carts with ripe red Elster apples ready to be shipped to European supermarkets. But Natway's farm is also reaping a second harvest. Many of the apple trees grow beneath solar panels that have been producing bountiful electricity during this year's unusually sun-rich summer, while providing the fruit below with much-needed shade.
This agri-photovoltaic system behind me has been set up since May 2021. And this is now the first harvest that we expect. This is an experimental harvest. It's not conclusive yet, but we are hoping to get some insights over the years to see if it can work the way we want it to.
Getting the right mix of crop and solar is hard though, because modern fruit varieties are finely tuned to particular growing conditions. Any change can tip the balance, costing farmers revenue if their produce ends up with the wrong color or level of sweetness consumers prefer. That's why Natway is collaborating with researchers to test which apple varieties thrive under the solar canopy and which types of photovoltaic roof are best suited for the orchard. For comparison, some trees are covered with conventional netting normally used to protect sensitive crops from hail. Researchers hope the test will show that crops thrive just as well under solar panels. This could help prevent renewable energy production from competing for precious land with agriculture, a growing concern for those seeking to tackle climate change and rising food prices. Natway said he could use the electricity generated on the farm to power his own facilities and machines. But to start with, he plans to provide the electricity to dozens of nearby homes instead.
Now let's take a look at our regular feature on sports. At every stage of this year's US Open, Wu Yibing has made history. No Chinese man had ever reached the main draw of the US Open in the Open era until Wu and his compatriot Zhang Jizhen both qualified for this year's tournament last week. Wu Yibing became the first Chinese man to win a singles match at any Grand Slam for 63 years with a 6-3, 6-4 and 6-0 victory over Nicolas Basilashvili in the first round. by defeating fellow qualifier Nuno Borges 6-7, 7-6, 4-6, 6-4 and 6-4 in a 4-hour thriller on Wednesday. The 22-year-old also became the first Chinese man since 1881 to reach the third round, where he will face the world number 1 and defending champion Daniil Medvedev on Friday. The last man from China to reach the third round of any Grand Slam was Ko Shin-kie at Wimbledon in 1946. Wu confirmed his status as a rising star in the men's game back in 2017 at US Open, when he became the boys' singles champion. Since that victory, Wu has played in a few international tournaments due to the back, shoulder, wrist and elbow injuries, as well as the travel restrictions in China prompted by the COVID-19 pandemic. On the ATP Challenger Tour, the level below the ATP Tour, Wu has begun to rebuild this year, winning 3 titles on the circuit and catapulting himself from the world number 1,869 to a career high of world number 173. 13 years after leaving, Steph Curry has been officially enshrined in Davidson folklore. Curry graduated from Davidson College in a ceremony commemorating his career in front of a crowd gathered to celebrate the NBA veteran. The 34-year-old needed to complete 1 semester of coursework to earn his Bachelor of Science degree in sociology, which he accomplished in May. However, he wasn't able to attend the commencement ceremony. But he was finally honored on Wednesday evening. As well as receiving his diploma, Curry had his now famous number 30 jersey number retired by Davidson, as well as being inducted into Davidson College's Hall of Fame. Curry became the first Davidson athlete in any sport to have his jersey number retired. The school has a rule that athletes must have a degree for a jersey to be retired. During his time at the college, which is located about 25 miles north of Charlotte, North Carolina, where the 4-time NBA champion grew up, Curry blossomed into a future star. In 3 seasons, Curry finished his distinguished career as the Southern Conference all-time leading scorer. He set a conference career record for triples, made 414, and set an NCAA record with 162 three-pointers in 2008. Curry was named first-team All-Conference all 3 years and was a consensus All-American in 2009. Curry was honored with speeches from his parents, Sonia and Dal, and his former coach Bob McKillop, among others. Curry, who played for the college between 2006 and 2009, was drafted with the 7th pick of the 2009 NBA draft by the Golden State Warriors. With the San Francisco-based team, Curry has developed into a league-altering player, his lethalness from the three-point range almost single-handedly changing the way teams have played offense and defense. In 2012-2013 season, Curry set the record for most three-pointers in a season, a record he further broke 2 times. On December 14, 2021, Curry set the NBA record for career three-pointers, passing Ray Allen. In his 13 years in the NBA, Curry has won the NBA title 4 times, most recently last season, been named NBA Most Valuable Player twice, and is an 8-time All-Star. Here's the weather forecast of all the major cities. Well, that's all for this week, and thank you for staying with us. We'll see you next week with more news and updates. Have a nice evening. Goodbye.